I did not hear footsteps in the hall. I did not hear a knock. At midnight, the envelope was simply there, resting on the floor of my apartment as if it had been waiting for me all along. The wax seal drew my eye first. A blackened cross pressed into brittle red wax, edges cracked like burnt skin. I knew the symbol, the Knights Templar, or what fragments of them still lingered in whispers and half-buried archives. The parchment inside smelled faintly of smoke. The message was short, written in a hand sharp enough to cut. Julian Harker, you are summoned. The vigil begins tomorrow night. St. Aubrey's Cemetery. Enter before the last bell. If you do not, the ashes will choose another, and the fire does not forgive. No signature, no explanation. I should have burned it. Instead, I folded the letter into my pocket and tried not to think about it. But all through the next day, its words gnawed at me. The ashes will choose another. Chosen for what? By what? By the time the sun set, I already knew I was going. The gates of St. Aubrey's Cemetery were older than the city that surrounded it, iron twisted into barbed patterns, stone pillars cracked with ivy. I pushed them open, and the sound echoed like a groan. Mist clung to the ground, curling around weathered graves. The air was colder inside the walls, heavy with a silence that did not belong to any ordinary night. A lantern burned deeper in, its light trembling through the fog. Figures stood around it, cloaked in fabric the color of ash. Their hoods hid their faces, but their stillness made them more unsettling than if they had stared. One stepped forward, a woman's voice strong despite the years. You came, few do. Her hood shifted, revealing a lined face and eyes sharp as broken glass. I am Sister Christina. From this moment you will call me nothing else. If you stay, you follow what is spoken. If you fail, you will not leave this place alive. Behind her, two others waited. One was broad, shoulders hunched like a soldier who had never put down his weapon. His glare pinned me in place. Brother Malric, Christina said. The other was younger, pale, clutching a leather-bound book, as if it might vanish from his hands. His lips moved with silent prayers. Father Marco. They did not ask my name. They already knew. They did not ask why I came. They already decided. Christina pressed a cold iron key into my palm. The vigil is not spoken of in the world above. But now you are here. If you open the door, you walk with us, and there is no turning back. The key turned with a grinding weight, and the stone door before us shuddered open. A stairwell spiraled down into blackness. The first breath of air that rose from below carried the scent of smoke, not fresh, but ancient. The kind of smoke that never leaves stone, no matter how many centuries pass. We descended with lanterns. The walls were carved with prayers in a language half eroded, half scorched. At every step, I felt the weight of earth pressing closer, as if the ground itself wanted to swallow us. At the bottom lay a chamber broad as a chapel, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air shimmered faintly like heat above a fire, though the stone under my boots was cold. In the center stood a circle traced in salt and iron nails. Within it rested a stone bowl filled with gray ash. Above it burned a single candle. The flame was too steady. Beside the bowl leaned a mask of iron, shaped into a human face twisted in silent agony. Blackened edges told of fire so fierce it had tried to melt the metal. The others lowered their heads. Only Christina spoke. This is what remains of Saint Aurelian. Her words trembled through the chamber. He was not condemned by Rome. He was condemned by God himself. What he carried in life cannot be destroyed. It can only be kept. That is our burden. A sound stirred. Not from Christina, not from Malric or Marco. It came from the ash, low, wordless, like a choir humming through stone. The sound thickened the air, pressed against my chest until I could hardly breathe. The candle flame bent sideways as if pulled by invisible breath. The ash shifted, rising in a thin spiral, slow and deliberate. I took a step back, but it drifted toward me, ignoring the others. A single fleck touched my hand and seared cold into my skin. Christina's eyes widened. For the first time her voice wavered. "The ashes have noticed you." The lanterns flickered, the hum deepened, and I knew the vigil had already begun. The ash burned a mark into my skin, faint but unmistakable, like frost that refused to melt. I tried to rub it away, but the gray stain sank deeper, veins paling around it. Brother Malric tightened his grip on the hammer at his side. "It has chosen him," he muttered, as though spitting poison. "He does not belong here. Cast him out before it is too late." "No," Sister Christina said. Her voice carried iron. "When the ashes choose, we obey." She gestured sharply. Malric scowled but lowered the hammer. Father Marco raised his book higher, his lips trembling against prayers I did not understand. Christina turned back to me. "You open the door. Now you must hear the laws. Without them, you will not see another dawn." The choir hum from the ashes deepened, vibrating through the floor, shaking the iron mask where it leaned. My pulse matched the rhythm without my consent. Christina stepped to the circle's edge. The candle flame steadied, as if waiting for her words. Her hand rose, fingers marked with burns old and new. "There are 5 laws. Listen with your life, for your life is all they guard." Her eyes locked on mine, and she spoke the first. 1. Do not let the flame die. As long as it burns, the saint sleeps. If it falters, his eyes will open. The candle flickered, as if to remind me. Christina's voice cut again. 2. Do not touch the mask. His agony lives within it. To wear it is to invite his voice into your skull, and it never leaves. The mask shuddered against the stone, iron teeth of its mouth gleaming. 3. Kneel at the 9th toll. The bells above are not ours. They ring for him. If you do not kneel, the toll will claim your spine, and you will never rise again. A hollow clang echoed faintly from far above, as though the cemetery bell tower answered her words. My knees weakened just hearing it. 4. Keep the ashes inside the circle. If even a grain crosses the salt, it will search for flesh, and once inside, it burns forever. The ash in the bowl pulsed, and I swore I saw shapes shifting within, like a face forming from smoke. Christina's voice dropped lower for the last law. 5. If the ashes mark you, you belong to us. There is no return, no absolution. You are bound until the vigil ends, or until it takes you. Her words settled over me heavier than stone. My hand throbbed where the ash had touched me, the gray mark spreading like a bruise of winter. Father Marco broke the silence. His voice cracked as he read from the leather-bound book, Latin syllables spilling out like blood. The ash quivered in answer, swirling in patterns too precise to be random. Christina nodded toward me. Step forward. I froze. Malric's glare sharpened. He is weak. He will falter. Let me end this now. But Christina shook her head. The ashes know him. He must stand in the circle. Every instinct screamed to run, to shove the iron door open and never look back. But my feet moved anyway, dragging me closer to the bowl of ash. The candle's flame licked higher as I approached, throwing warped shadows across the chamber. The mask leaned against the stone, its hollow eyes fixed on me. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard a whisper bleed from its iron mouth. My name. Julian. The salt circle glowed faintly as I stepped inside. The temperature dropped so sharply my breath poured out in clouds. The choir hum rose, vibrating through my teeth. Christina's voice came from far away. Kneel. I knelt. My marked hand hovered over the bowl, the gray stain burning colder with every heartbeat. The ash lifted, grain by grain, rising toward my skin as if pulled by some magnetic hunger. Marco's chanting grew louder. Malric slammed the butt of his hammer into the floor, each strike keeping time with the chant. The candle flame bent sideways, fighting to hold. The ash reached higher, curling around my wrist, brushing against my throat. Christina's voice cut through the storm. Do not fear it. If it wishes you, it will take you. If it spares you, it means you must serve. The ash touched my face. My vision blurred, gray swallowing the edges of the world. I felt something press against my thoughts, not words, but weight, like a hand pushing against glass inside my skull. And then, from within the ash, I heard it. A voice, layered, fractured, speaking like three tongues at once. Kneel at the 9th toll. The candle snapped taller, flaring white. The iron mask clattered against stone, rattling like teeth. And somewhere far above, a bell began to toll. The first toll shook the stone above our heads, a deep iron note that rolled through the chamber and down my spine. My teeth ached. The gray ash surged upward as if pulled by the sound, spiraling tighter around my wrist. The second toll followed, louder. My knees buckled, though I was already kneeling. I tried to stand, tried to resist the pressure pressing into my back, but my muscles turned to water. Sister Christina's voice cut the air. Do not fight it. Bend, or it will break you. The third toll cracked the air like thunder. My shoulders bowed without my consent. Every nerve screamed against the force pressing down. It was not fear. It was compulsion, as if the sound itself demanded obedience. The fourth toll rang, and I gasped as my spine bent further. The ash coiled up my arm, slithering like a living rope. The cold burned deeper into my flesh. I tried to speak, to call out, but the fifth toll swallowed my voice. My jaw clenched so tightly it felt like it might shatter. The hum from the ashes had become a full choir now, a wordless chant vibrating inside my skull. Marco's chanting grew frantic, his Latin prayers clashing against the tolls. Malric struck the floor with his hammer in rhythm, sparks spitting from the stone. Christina's eyes never left me. She watched as if weighing my worth with every ring. The sixth toll made the lanterns flicker out. Darkness swallowed the chamber except for the candle above the bowl. Its flame stretched unnaturally high, twisting like a pale finger. Shadows lengthened, bending in directions that had no source. The seventh toll came, and my body convulsed. My back arched, muscles tearing against invisible chains. I felt something slide between my ribs, not physical, but cold and immense, as if the toll itself had reached inside. The eighth toll nearly split me in two. My vision went white. My ears bled. My body flattened against the stone floor. Christina shouted, "The 9th is his! Kneel or be broken!" The 9th toll exploded through the chamber. My body dropped flat, forehead slamming against cold stone. Every bone in my spine screamed as if it might snap. My marked hand pressed against the ash, and in that moment it felt like the bowl itself inhaled. I did not choose to kneel. The bell claimed me. The pressure released as quickly as it came. The ash fell limp, drifting back into the bowl. The candle steadied, its flame shrinking to a fragile flicker. I lay gasping, sweat freezing against my skin. My hand throbbed with a deeper stain, gray veins threading across my palm. Malric sneered down at me. "Pathetic! He bent before the saint's toll. He will not last the vigil." Christina silenced him with a glance. "He survived. That's enough." Marco's voice trembled as he closed his book. "The bell does not always stop. Sometimes it rings past the 9th. Then nothing human remains standing." The ash gave a final shiver, as though mocking us. I forced myself upright, spine aching as if struck with rods. That was not just sound. Christina's gaze was hard. No, it was command. The toll is his voice. Those who resist are crushed. Those who yield may serve. My stomach turned cold. "Serve what?" She didn't answer. Above us, the echoes of the ninth toll faded into silence. For a moment, the chamber breathed again, but then I noticed it. The candle's flame had shrunk to the width of a needle. Malric cursed under his breath. The flame falters. Christina's face blanched. Then the first law must be remembered. I stared at the flickering candle. Each time it wavered, the ash in the bowl stirred, grains twitching as though eager to escape. My marked hand throbbed in rhythm. Christina's voice dropped low. If the flame dies, he will rise, and none of us will leave this place alive. The candle guttered, smoke curling. The chamber darkened further, and for the first time, I understood the weight of her words. The vigil was not a watch. It was a war. The candle guttered, smoke curling into the stale air. Each flicker dimmed the chamber, and each dimming stirred the ashes. They trembled in the bowl like insects waking from sleep. Sister Christina barked an order. "Marco, the oil, now!" The young priest fumbled with a flask from his robes, nearly dropping it. His hands shook as he poured a few drops into the base of the candle. The flame flared weakly, then shrank again, stubborn against our efforts. Malric slammed his hammer down. Sparks spat from stone. "It is not the oil. Something is drawing it out." The ashes pulsed in answer, a slow heartbeat that did not belong to the living. My marked hand burned cold, the gray stain spreading past my wrist. Christina's eyes snapped to me. "Step back from the circle." I obeyed, stumbling away. The flame steadied slightly, though still thin, fragile as a dying breath. Marco whispered, "It reacts to him. The saint knows his blood." Christina silenced him with a glance. "Focus. Keep the flame alive. Nothing else matters." The ashes stirred again. This time the sound came with them, not the hum I had heard before, but a whisper. Broken syllables clawed at my ears. "Harker." I froze. It had said my name. The others had heard it too. Malric gripped his hammer until his knuckles whitened. "He is calling to the new one. This should never have been allowed." Christina's jaw tightened. "The ashes choose. We do not." The whisper came again, louder, layered with voices. Men, women, even children. Thousands speaking at once. Each syllable a nail driven into my skull. "Kneel, fire, ashes, belong." My knees buckled. I clutched my head, but the words pressed from inside. For a moment, I saw, beyond the candlelight, visions flickering in the dark edges of the chamber. A figure chained to a post, flames consuming his flesh, iron mask seared onto his face as he screamed. And through the fire, his eyes glowed white, not with pain, but with devotion twisted into something unholy. I stumbled back, gasping. It was him, Saint Aurelian. I saw him burn. Christina's stare cut through me. "Then you have seen what we guard." The candle sputtered again, dropping lower. Smoke rose in choking spirals. Marco panicked. "It will not hold. The flame is failing." Christina grabbed a small vial from her cloak, uncorked it, and poured thick black liquid onto the wick. The flame burst with sudden vigor, taller than before, stretching unnaturally high until it scraped the low air like a spear of light. The ashes shrieked. There is no other word for it. A chorus of wails erupted. Not from mouths, but from the dust itself. The iron mask rattled against the floor, jaw clanging like teeth grinding. Christina's face was pale, lips trembling, though her voice stayed steady. "Blood of martyrs. It is what binds the fire. Without it, the flame would have died." I stared at the vial. It was empty now. What happens when there is no more? She did not answer. The flame steadied, but its light changed. Shadows twisted across the chamber, bending into forms that should not exist, shapes of wings broken in a flame, hands with too many fingers grasping from the dark corners of stone. Malric spat on the ground. "He stirs! We should end this now. Shatter the bowl, scatter the ashes, bury them deep." Christina snapped. "And let them seep into the soil, into the bones of the city. No, the circle holds, or nothing holds." The whispers clawed again. My name bled through the noise. Julian, kneel, serve. My vision blurred. In the twisting shadows, I saw the figure again, Saint Aurelian, only this time he was not burning. He was kneeling, head bowed in prayer, but his chains were gone. The fire that once consumed him now burned behind his eyes, white and endless. I staggered closer to the circle despite myself. The ash rose eagerly, stretching toward me like hands through prison bars. Malric roared, swinging his hammer. The head crashed against the stone floor, inches from my feet, sparks scattering. "Stay back, or I will crush your skull before he takes you." Christina raised her hand. "Enough! He must see. The vigil tests the chosen. None of us may interfere." The candle flared again, light blazing across the chamber. In its glow, the ash lifted higher, forming a shape above the bowl. A torso, a face, half-formed, features twisting between agony and serenity. Father Marco dropped his book. "It is him. God help us. It is him." Christina's voice trembled with something I could not name, fear, reverence, or both. "The burned saint stirs." The flame snapped, showering sparks. The ash face turned toward me, hollow eyes wide and burning white, and then the whisper became a single clear voice, filling the chamber like thunder. "Julian Harker, my vigilant." The chamber shuddered with the echo of my name. The ashes fell still, collapsing into the bowl as though the voice had drained them. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the hiss of the candle. I could not breathe. My own heartbeat thundered in my skull, refusing to slow. The burned saint had spoken. He had spoken to me. Christina's lips moved soundlessly before she whispered, "It begins." Then came another sound. Not from the ashes, from above. Footsteps. We froze. No one else should have been here. No one should even know. Malric gripped his hammer and sprinted for the stairwell, his boots striking stone like war drums. The rest of us followed. The crypt door groaned open, and lantern light spilled across the mist of St. Aubrey Cemetery. A figure stood in the doorway, framed by the fog. He was young, maybe 30, robes black, but not custodian cloth. A silver cross hung around his neck, glinting faintly in the lantern glow. "Forgive me," he said, raising his hands. His voice was calm, steady, practiced. "I mean no harm. I heard the tolls. I saw your lights. I thought you might need help." Malric snarled, hammer raised. "No one stumbles here by chance." The man bowed slightly. "Father Gabriel Vayner, newly appointed to the parish east of here. I was walking when the bells rang, though no tower in the city should ring at this hour. I followed, and I found you." Christina stepped forward, eyes like blades. "This ground is forbidden. No priest, no parish, no curious wanderer has claim to it. Leave now." But Gabriel's gaze moved past her, settling on me. His expression softened, almost pitying. "You look pale, friend. The ashes have touched you, haven't they?" The words sliced through me. He knew. How could he know? Malric shoved forward, hammer inches from Gabriel's chest. "You will not speak of things you do not understand." Gabriel's calm never cracked. "But I do understand, more than you think. The ashes call to blood, not to prayer. They chose him because of what runs in his veins." Christina's eyes narrowed. "Enough, you will go." For a heartbeat, Gabriel's jaw tightened, a shadow flickering across his face. But then he lowered his head, voice smooth again. "If you insist. I only wanted to help. No man should stand against that fire alone." He turned as if to leave. The mist swallowed him. Malric cursed, spitting on the ground. "Liar, his tongue drips with it. If I see him again, his skull will split." Christina remained still, staring into the fog where Gabriel had vanished. Marco clutched his book tighter, eyes darting nervously. I could still hear Gabriel's voice in my head. The ashes call to blood. Back in the chamber, the candle burned lower than before. Its wax had nearly consumed itself, and no vial of martyr's blood remained. Christina's hands trembled as she relit the wick with fresh oil, but the flame shivered weakly, as though refusing her touch. "We hold what remains," she said softly, more to herself than us. But the cracks deepen. The ash stirred faintly, almost playful, not the furious hum from before, but a murmur. And beneath it, I swore I heard laughter. Marco whispered, "If the flame dies," Christina silenced him, "then we do not speak of what follows." I could not take my eyes from the ashes. My hand ached with their mark, and in that ache, another memory of Gabriel surfaced, the way his eyes lingered, not on the bowl, not on the mask, but on me. Why me? The candle bent sideways, a draft sweeping the chamber. Malric swore, gripping his hammer again, but it was not wind, it was breath. The ashes exhaled, scattering gray dust into the air, and in that cloud I saw shapes, faces, not Aurelian, not saints, faces of ordinary men and women, mouths open in silent screams, eyes hollow. The dust fell back into the bowl. The candle's flame steadied, thin but holding. Christina's voice broke the silence. "The vigil has changed. Someone has disturbed its path. He should never have been here." Malric growled, "Let me hunt him before he returns." But Christina shook her head. "He will return. They always do. The vigil draws more than the willing." She turned to me. "And when he does, you must be ready, because it is you the saint has named, not us." The candle hissed. The ashes trembled, and above, faint through the cemetery fog, a voice echoed. Julian, not the saint, not the ashes. It was Gabriel, calling my name. The candle burned lower, its flame trembling like a dying heartbeat. Each flicker sent fresh ripples through the bowl of ashes. They shifted restlessly, eager for the moment the light would vanish. My hand throbbed with the gray mark. It spread past my wrist now, threading veins up my forearm and pale branches. No matter how hard I clenched my fist, the cold never left. Christina poured the last drops of oil, but the wick drank them greedily and offered little in return. The flame snapped, shrank, then caught again, weak as a child's breath. "We are out of oil," Marco whispered. His eyes glistened, fear leaking through his piety. Malric's hammer struck the stone. "Then the vigil is already lost." "No," Christina snapped. Her voice carried steel, but the lines in her face deepened. "The vigil is not lost until the flame dies. We hold it until the end. That is the law." Her words echoed, but the chamber seemed to mock them. From the ashes came a murmur, soft at first, then louder. Not the hum of before, but words, jagged and broken, stitched from 1,000 voices. I froze. One of the voices was familiar. Julian. I turned, breath caught in my throat. It was impossible, but the sound was hers. My sister's, dead for years, buried far from here. The ashes stirred, releasing another fragment. "Help me, Julian, please!" My knees weakened. The air reeked of smoke, but beneath it lingered a smell I knew too well. Burned fabric, scorched hair, the night of the fire, the night she never came out. "No," I whispered, "you are not her." But the ashes pressed harder. "You left me." "You let me burn! Why did you not save me?" My stomach twisted. The memory slammed into me with merciless clarity. The house ablaze, my hands bleeding against locked doors, the screams muffled until they weren't screams anymore. Christina's voice cut through. "Do not listen. It feeds on your wounds. It wears the voices of the dead." But I could not stop hearing her. Every syllable was a knife. My marked hand burned colder, pulling me toward the bowl. Malric shoved me back, his hammer's weight across my chest. "Control yourself, or I will end you before he claims you." Christina dragged me upright. "You must resist. The saint hunts through grief. That is how he enters." But then another voice slid through the chamber, clear, human, living. Perhaps he does not hunt. Perhaps he simply tells the truth. We spun. Gabriel stood in the stairwell, cloaked in shadow. His silver cross glinted, eyes calm as ever. Malric lunged, but Christina raised her arm. "Stay your hand." Gabriel stepped closer, unflinching under Malric's glare. "You silence him, yet you do not deny him. Why? Because you fear his truth, or because you know it is yours as well?" Christina's face hardened. "You should not be here." "And yet I am," Gabriel said smoothly. His gaze fell on me. "You heard her, did you not? The voice of the one you lost. Tell me, Julian, did she lie?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. Gabriel's tone softened, gentle, dangerous. "The custodians will call it deception. They always do. But perhaps what you heard is mercy. A gift. A chance to see what was taken." Christina's eyes blazed. "Enough! You profane this chamber with poison." "Or perhaps," Gabriel countered, "I free him from yours. Look at him. Marked, chosen, spoken to by the ashes themselves. You claim to guard the saint, but perhaps it is not a prison at all. Perhaps it is a sanctuary. And you, jailers." His words sank into the silence. Marco's lips trembled on his prayers, uncertain. Malric's grip on his hammer tightened, ready to strike. But it was my heart that faltered. My sister's voice still lingered, her plea echoing in my skull. What if Gabriel was right? What if the ashes carried truth, not lies? The candle guttered again, weaker than ever. Shadows bent, forming shapes of arms, stretching from the corners of the chamber. The iron mask rattled against the stone. Gabriel's voice lowered, meant only for me. "When the flame dies, you will see her again. Do not fear it. Embrace it." Christina shouted over him, desperate. "Do not believe him. The ashes consume. They do not return. They devour and wear the faces of what we love. That is all." The flame wavered to a pinprick. Smoke curled upward. The ashes stirred, voices rising into a chorus. And through the storm, my sister screamed again, "Julian, save me!" The candle sputtered to a pin of light, then flared weakly again. Smoke stung my throat. The ashes shivered, eager, restless, waiting. Christina's prayers cut sharp through the air. "Hold fast! The flame lives!" But Gabriel's voice rose louder, smooth as a blade sliding between ribs. "No, sister, the flame dies. You cannot feed it anymore. You have nothing left but lies." Malric raised his hammer, ready to crush Gabriel where he stood. One swing and his tongue will end. "Wait," Gabriel said, opening his hands. His calm was unbroken, but his eyes glinted with something colder. "If you strike me, you will only hasten what comes. Do you not feel it? He's already awake." The ashes trembled violently, dust lifting into the air. The whisper voices merged into a single low growl that vibrated through my bones. Gabriel stepped closer to the circle. His silver cross caught the dying flame, reflecting a white spark across the chamber. "Do you know why he calls to me as he calls to your chosen?" He pointed at me, then pressed a hand against his chest. "Because I am not a stranger to this blood. It was my ancestor who stood here 3 centuries ago, my family who bound him, then betrayed him." Christina's face went white. "You?" "Yes." Gabriel cut her off, his voice rising with certainty. "Vanar, the name you have buried, the line you cursed, you thought time would kill it. You thought silence would erase it, but I stand here, flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood." Malric roared, "The traitor's seed! I knew it the moment I saw you." Gabriel smiled. "Then you should have killed me sooner." He bit into his own palm with sudden ferocity. Blood welled bright and red, dripping onto the stone. As it struck the salt, the circle hissed and smoked. The candle flame jerked sideways, stretching high, then shattering into sparks. The ashes convulsed. They rose in a storm, grains spinning like a cyclone above the bowl. A sound erupted, half scream, half hymn, that rattled the chamber's walls. Christina lunged, trying to reinforce the circle with her hands, pouring fresh lines of salt, but the moment Gabriel's blood touched the floor, the barrier cracked. Thin fissures spread outward from the bowl, glowing faintly like embers. Marco screamed a prayer, voice breaking. His book slipped from his hands, pages scattering. "The binding is failing!" Gabriel's laughter cut through the chaos. "Failing? No. Awakening. For centuries you have chained him, denied him, fed scraps of martyr blood to keep him sleeping. You feared his truth. My blood frees it." Christina seized his arm, nails digging into his flesh. "You damn us all!" He wrenched free, blood still dripping, splattering against the cracked salt. Every drop hissed, spreading the fissures wider. The air thickened, heat and cold colliding until my lungs burned with frost and fire together. I staggered forward. "Gabriel, stop! You do not know what you're unleashing." He turned his eyes on me, and for a heartbeat, I swore I saw the white fire of the ashes burning in them. "Do not fear it, Julian. He called you too. We are chosen together. You will see what lies beyond." The ashes surged higher, coalescing into a shape, not full, not whole, but forming. A torso, arms stretching, head bending toward us. Hollow sockets glowed white. Malric charged, hammer raised and swung at Gabriel with a roar. The head of the hammer missed him by inches, smashing the floor and spraying shards of stone. Gabriel laughed again, wild now, blood dripping freely from his hand. "Strike me down and you strike the key itself. You cannot stop this. The saint remembers." The fissures glowed brighter. The mask rattled, then lifted from the floor, trembling as though pulled by invisible strings. It turned in the air, hollow eyes staring at us all. Marco fell to his knees, weeping. "God preserve us!" Christina shouted over the roar of ash. "Julian, the flame, keep it alive!" I spun to the candle. Its flame was almost gone, a whisper of light clinging to the wick. I tried to shield it with my hand, but the air churned, whipping sparks and dust against me. The ashes thundered, swirling into a storm. The face forming above the bowl turned towards me. Its mouth opened, and from it came not a whisper, but a command, clear and terrible. "Kneel, my vigilant. The circle is broken." The floor split, salt scattered. The fissures blazed with white fire, and Gabriel's blood kept falling, drop by drop, feeding the cracks. The fissures split wide. Light bled through the cracks, not golden, not holy, but pale white fire that seared my eyes. The ashes rose in a cyclone, forming a body that bent and twisted as if it could not decide what shape it should take. St. Aurelian, the burned saint, was waking. The mask lifted higher, snapping into place across the shifting face of ash. Its iron teeth screeched as it locked against phantom flesh. Through the slits of the mask, eyes flared white, burning like torches drowned in frost. Christina's scream cut the air. "Hold the circle!" But the circle was gone. Salt scattered, iron nails glowing red before bursting apart. The protective ring that had stood for centuries was shattered in seconds. The burned saint stepped from the cyclone, his form half solid, half smoke. His robes clung in tatters of flame, his chest burned black and cracked, revealing veins of molten light beneath. His hands stretched wide, one skeletal, one still flesh-like, dripping ash that hissed against stone. When he spoke, his voice split the air into fractures. "Faith chained me. Fire crowned me, but your blood frees me." Gabriel dropped to his knees, head bowed as though before a king. His bloody hand trembled with ecstasy. "I have served, my saint. I have brought you to wake." The burned saint lowered his masked face toward him. For a moment it looked like blessing. Then his hand, the skeletal one, snapped forward and seized Gabriel's skull. Gabriel's scream was brief. The saint's grip tightened and Gabriel's eyes flared white before collapsing inward. His body dropped, lifeless, ash pouring from his mouth like dust shaken from an old book. Christina charged with a dagger drawn from her cloak. The blade was iron, its surface carved with wards. She plunged it into the saint's side. The burned saint staggered, then laughed. The sound was not laughter, but shattering glass. He ripped the blade free and drove it through Christina's chest. She gasped once, eyes wide with shock. Blood blossomed dark against her robes. She slumped to the floor, her lips still moving in prayer until silence took her. "Christina!" Marco screamed. His book slipped from his hands as he rushed forward with a wooden crucifix. His prayers spilled out in ragged bursts. The burned saint lifted his flesh hand. The crucifix burst into flames before it touched him. Marco's body ignited, his scream echoing through the chamber until it ended in a choking hiss. Malric roared in fury, swinging his hammer with both arms. The blow crashed into the saint's chest, scattering ash and sparks. For a heartbeat, the figure staggered. Then the saint caught the hammer with his skeletal hand. The iron head glowed red, melting in his grip. Malric struggled, teeth gritted, until the saint snapped the hammer like a twig and drove the molten shard into Malric's throat. Blood sprayed. Malric collapsed, gurgling, clawing at the wound until his body stilled. I stood frozen, my chest heaving, my stomach twisting in horror. In minutes, the custodians were gone. The burned saint turned to me, his mask tilted, eyes of white fire fixed on mine. His voice was a choir and a furnace. "You are not them, you are mine." The mark on my hand burned cold fire, spreading now across my chest. I staggered back, clutching myself, but the stain only grew. The saint's steps left black ash prints on the stone. He drew closer, tilting his head like a curious child. "You knelt at my toll. You bore my touch. You are chosen Julian Harker. Stand, stand, and serve." Behind him, the chamber warped. Shadows stretched into wings, walls bending as though reality itself tried to escape. The candle was gone, trampled in the chaos. No flame, no light, only his. I thought of Christina's lifeless body, of Marco's scream, of Malric's blood bubbling on stone. And still I could hear my sister's voice in the storm of whispers. "Julian, save me." The burned saint stretched his hand toward me, ash drifting from his palm like snow. "Take what I offer, a fire that cannot die, the dead returned, a world unchained." I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs rooted in place. The mark pulsed like a second heart, beating in rhythm with his voice. The chamber shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere above, the cemetery bell tolled once, not 9 times, not a call to kneel, just once, a warning. The burned saint's eyes flared brighter. "Do you hear it, Vigilant? Even the bells bow to me now." And with that, his hand closed the distance between us. The burned saint's hand hovered inches from my chest. Cold fire radiated from his palm, the mark on my skin pulsing in perfect rhythm with his reach. If he touched me, I knew the circle would no longer matter. I would not belong to myself. My mind screamed through the laws Christina had drilled into me. Do not let the flame die. The candle was gone. Do not touch the mask. It was welded to his face now. Kneel at the 9th toll. The bell outside had tolled once, its power broken. Keep the ashes inside the circle. The circle was shattered. If the ashes mark you, you belong to us. The mark had already spread through my arm, up my neck. There was no law left to save me, unless I broke one. Christina's dying words rang in my head. If the ashes mark you, you belong to us. But what if belonging was not inevitable? What if I defied it? I staggered backward, fumbling through the debris of salt and iron nails. My fingers closed around a shard of Marco's broken crucifix. The wood was scorched, but still intact enough to hold. The saint tilted his head. You cling to dead wood. What is wood against fire? The whisper of my sister's voice swelled. Julian, come to me. You can save me if you serve him. I pressed the shard against my own marked hand. My pulse thundered. This was the law I would break. If the ashes mark you, you belong to us. I would not belong. I drove the shard into the wound, tearing the flesh where the mark had spread. Pain ripped through me. Gray blood hissed out, mingling with black dust. The saint staggered, his masked face jerking. For the first time he roared, not laughter, not command, but rage. You defy my claim? My vision blurred red. The mark shrieked inside me, veins burning as if filled with ice. But the ash recoiled, forced back into the bowl in violent spasms. The saint lurched forward, skeletal hand reaching again. His voice cracked into 1,000 tones. You are mine, Vigilant. You kneel, you bleed, you burn. I stumbled toward the hammer Malric had dropped. Its head was half melted, the handle charred, but I seized it with both hands. My grip shook. The saint's molten veins pulsed brighter, his form unraveling between smoke and solid flame. The fissures under him widened, vomiting light that stank of sulfur and incense. I swung the hammer. It struck the mask, sparks cascading. The saint reeled, but the mask held. His laugh returned, deeper now. Break it and I break you. The chamber trembled. Cracks spread through the ceiling, stones raining down. Ash coiled like snakes around my legs, pulling me toward the saint's feet. My lungs filled with smoke that was not smoke. Memories, screams, every death he had consumed. I dropped to one knee, choking. The hammer slipped from my hand. The saint loomed above me, his voice swelling until it was all that existed. Kneel, Julian Harker. You already have. Your law is broken. Now break the rest. The mask's hollow eyes locked with mine. Behind the iron, I saw flickers of a man once holy, once human. Aurelian, the saint who prayed even as he burned. His lips moved behind the mask, words only I could hear. Finish it. My body moved before thought. I seized the iron nails scattered across the floor. With trembling hands, I carved a rough circle around myself, spilling blood from my wounded palm into the salt. The saint howled, ash whipping in fury, striking my skin with lashes of fire. My veins screamed, but the circle glowed faintly. Holding. I dragged myself to the bowl of ashes, the center of it all. The saint's shadow fell across me, towering wrath incarnate. You cannot bind me again, he thundered. I plunged my bleeding hand into the ashes. The cold fire seared me from within, ripping through every nerve. My scream tore the chamber, but I forced the words Christina had whispered into the marrow of my mind. Latin, broken but desperate. A prayer, a curse, a chain. The bowl erupted. Ash exploded outward, filling the chamber like a storm. The saint shrieked, his form unraveling, light tearing through him in violent cracks. The mask split down the center. Behind it, a face burned, half divine, half damned, mouth open in both prayer and curse. He reached for me, skeletal fingers inches away. And then the fissures beneath us gave way. The floor glowed white-hot, swallowing everything. Silence followed. The chamber was wreckage. The salt circle smeared, the nails melted, the candle gone. Smoke hung thick, the air heavy with burned incense and old blood. I coughed until my throat tore raw. My hand still rested in the bowl. Though the ashes within had fused with my flesh, gray veins stretched across my arm, glowing faintly, pulsing like a second heart. I pulled free. Ash dripped from my palm, trailing like sand that would never end. The wound would not close. Around me, the custodians lay still. Christina's eyes stared lifeless at the ceiling. Marco's charred body curled like a broken prayer. Malric's hammer lay beside him, its head split and melted into the floor. Only I remained. I staggered to my feet. My legs shook, my vision swam, but I did not fall. Something held me upright, something that was not mine. The fissures closed one by one, the white fire shrinking into nothing. But as the last sealed, I heard the faint echo of a voice. Not gone, not defeated. Julian Harker. Mine. I pressed my marked hand against the wound in my chest, but the cold fire pulsed on, steady, eternal. The stairwell above was choked with dust. I climbed, each step heavier than the last, until the cemetery air hit my lungs. Night still pressed overhead, stars smothered by clouds. The bells were silent. St. Aubrey Cemetery lay still, untouched, as if nothing below had happened. But I carried the proof in my veins. The vigil was over. The custodians were dead. And I was the last. I did not know if I had won or only delayed. The burned saint had not been destroyed, only forced back into his prison, a prison that now lived inside me. I walked among the graves until I found the gate. On the stone pillar, carved deep as if by unseen hands, words waited for me. The ashes mark you. You belong to us. I traced the letters with trembling fingers. My hand left streaks of gray dust across the stone. No matter how I wiped, the dust remained. I thought of Christina's certainty, Marco's faith, Malric's fury. They had lived for the vigil. They had died for it. Now their burden was mine. But I was not them. I was marked, broken, haunted by the voices of the dead. My sister's cry still whispered in my ear, soft now, almost tender. Julian. Save me. Was it him still reaching through the ashes? Or was it truly her? I no longer knew. I left the cemetery as dawn cracked faint light across the horizon. The world stirred as though nothing had changed. People woke, doors opened, life moved on. They would never know what had nearly clawed its way free beneath their feet, but I knew. And the mark on my arm knew. I will keep the vigil now, alone. And when the flame falters again, because it will, I will be there. But every night when I close my eyes, I wonder, am I guarding the ashes? Or am I only guarding myself until the day the burned saint rises through me?